It was a typical Thursday morning in their quiet, neatly kept house. Bradley was searching through the closet for his navy blue tie, the one he liked to wear for important meetings, when his hand stumbled upon something unexpected. It was a small, velvety box, the kind usually reserved for jewelry, or, in this case, a high-end watch. Alexis must have put this here, he muttered to himself, a smile spreading across his face. The thought of Alexis breaking their no-gift rule for Valentine's Day warmed his heart. Curiosity piqued, he opened the box and inside was a sleek, modern watch, its face gleaming under the closet light. This has to be for me, Bradley thought, feeling a mix of excitement and surprise. He carefully placed the watch back, making sure everything looked untouched. Later that morning, over a quick breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, Bradley tried to probe Alexis without giving away his discovery. "Got any special plans today?" he asked casually, taking a sip of his coffee. Alexis, dressed in her usual crisp business attire, looked up from her phone. "Just the usual day at the office. Why do you ask?" Bradley shrugged. "No reason, just making conversation." Alexis gave him a quick nod before returning to her emails, her mind clearly elsewhere. Bradley watched her for a moment, the secret of the watch burning a hole in his pocket. He decided to keep quiet about his find, thinking it might be part of a Valentine's surprise. As Alexis grabbed her keys and headed towards the door, Bradley called out, "Hey, Lexi, wait a sec." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Yeah." Nothing." "Have a good day at work," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Alexis raised an eyebrow but smiled slightly. "You too, Brad. Don't forget we have dinner with the Thompsons tomorrow." "Wouldn't miss it," Bradley replied, watching as she left. Sitting alone with his thoughts, Bradley felt a flutter of anticipation. Maybe this Valentine's Day will be different, he mused, his mind already racing with ideas on how to make the evening special. The watch was a sign, he hoped, of softer, more affectionate times ahead. Little did he know, the reality of the gift and its intended recipient was far different from what he imagined. The afternoon sun was sinking low by the time Bradley started his Valentine's Day preparations. He was determined to make the evening memorable, hopeful that the watch was a sign of changing tides in their relationship. He decided on making Alexis's favorite spaghetti carbonara and a side of garlic bread, something they'd enjoyed on one of their first dates. As he set about cooking, he couldn't help but rehearse the evening in his mind. She'll walk in, see the setup, and maybe, just maybe, feel a bit of the magic we used to have, he thought, chopping garlic finely. He set the table with their best dishes, lit a few candles, and even put on some soft jazz in the background, the kind Alexis liked to hum along to. Just as he was drizzling the final touch of parmesan over the pasta, he heard the front door open. "Bradley?" "What's all this?" Alexis's voice echoed from the hall, tinged with surprise and a hint of annoyance. Bradley poked his head out from the kitchen, a nervous smile on his face. "Happy Valentine's Day, Lexi. I thought we could have a special dinner, just the two of us." Alexis dropped her keys on the table and slipped off her heels. "Valentine's Day? Brad, you know we decided to not do these kinds of things. What's gotten into you?" Walking over to the dining area, she eyed the candles and music set up with a skeptical look. Bradley followed her, trying to gauge her mood. I know, but I found something today that made me think maybe you'd changed your mind." "And what would that be?" Alexis asked, folding her arms as she leaned against the wall. Bradley hesitated, then decided to keep the watch a secret for a little longer. "Just a feeling, I guess. Can we just enjoy the evening? I really put a lot of effort into this." Alexis sighed, her expression softening a bit as she glanced at the table. "It looks wonderful, Brad. But we agreed no gifts, no surprises. It's just practical for us, remember?" "Yeah, but isn't it nice to break the rules once in a while?" Bradley tried to keep the mood light, pouring them each a glass of wine. Alexis took the glass, her features relaxing as she took a sip. "It is nice, I'll give you that. Let's eat before it gets cold, but we're talking about this after, okay?" They sat down to eat, the air filled with a mix of aromas and unspoken questions. Bradley found himself watching Alexis more than he ate, wondering if she had any surprises of her own planned. As they moved on to the garlic bread, he found the courage to push a little more. "So, no plans to surprise me tonight," he ventured, trying to sound playful. Alexis looked up, a forkful of pasta paused mid-air. "Brad, seriously, I thought we were clear on this. Let's just not go down that road tonight, okay? Let's just enjoy the meal." Bradley nodded, a lump forming in his throat. The evening was not going as he had hoped, and the gap between his expectations and reality was starting to show. He smiled weakly, focusing on his plate, while inside, his hopes for the night began to wilt like the candles flickering between them. Dinner passed in a tentative peace, with Bradley and Alexis making small talk about work and mutual acquaintances. Despite the elegant setup and the delicious food, an undercurrent of tension hummed just below the surface. Bradley, feeling the weight of his unmet expectations, decided it was time to make a bold move. As they cleared the dishes, Bradley hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. "Alexis," wait, he said as she picked up the last of the dinner plates. Alexis turned, her eyebrows raised inquisitively. "What's that?" Well, I got you something. I know we said no gifts, but I couldn't help myself." Bradley extended the box towards her with a hopeful smile. Alexis set the plate down and took the box, her movements slow, almost reluctant. "Brad," we agreed. I know, Bradley cut in, eager to explain. "But I thought maybe, just maybe, we could make an exception. It's not about the gift, it's about showing we care, right?" Alexis unwrapped the box to reveal a delicate gold chain, shimmering softly in the light. Her face was unreadable for a moment before she sighed, placing the chain back into the box. "It's beautiful, Bradley, but this isn't what we agreed on." Bradley's heart sank a little, but he pressed on. "I just thought, I don't know, that maybe you had something for me too. I mean, I found something today that made me think maybe you'd changed your mind about us not doing gifts." Alexis looked puzzled. "Something like what? Bradley, what are you talking about?" He hesitated, the moment feeling more fragile than he'd anticipated. "Never mind, it's not important. I miss us, Lexi. I miss how things used to be when we would surprise each other." Alexis softened, her voice gentler. "I miss that too, sometimes, but we're trying to be practical, remember? It's not that I don't appreciate this," she gestured to the chain, "or you. It's just, we have to be sensible." Bradley nodded, the disappointment palpable but trying not to let it overwhelm him. "Okay, yeah, sensible, but just so you know, this was about more than just a gift. It was about showing you that you're important to me. More than just practicality." Alexis reached out and touched his arm, a rare moment of tenderness between them. "I know, Brad, and you are important to me too. Let's not let this ruin our night, okay?" Bradley forced a smile, okay, but as they returned to cleaning up, the unspoken words hung heavily in the air, and Bradley couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was missing between them, a gap that practicality alone couldn't bridge. The tension after dinner was palpable. Bradley washed the dishes while Alexis dried them and put them away, their conversation limited to basic pleasantries. With every clink of a plate or swish of the sponge, Bradley's anticipation for the watch grew. Maybe she's just saving it for the perfect moment, he mused silently. He was certain that Alexis's hesitation was part of a plan to surprise him later. After the kitchen was spotless, Bradley lingered in the living room. He settled on the couch and flipped through the channels absent-mindedly. Alexis came in and sat in the armchair across from him, scrolling through her phone with a furrowed brow. Bradley tried to strike up conversation. "Anything interesting on your feed?" Alexis looked up briefly. "Just work emails. I'm sorting out a few things for tomorrow." Bradley nodded, returning his focus to the TV. He watched Alexis out of the corner of his eye, waiting for her to put down her phone and maybe bring out the watch. Minutes stretched into an hour. Bradley cleared his throat and ventured a light-hearted question. "You sure you didn't forget anything today, Lex?" Alexis glanced up, her eyes puzzled. "Forget? What do you mean?" Bradley hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Well, it's Valentine's Day, right? I just thought. Maybe you had something planned. Alexis put down her phone, leaning back into the armchair with a frown. Bradley, we talked about this. No gifts, no surprises. We're being sensible. Bradley's heart sank, but he tried not to show his disappointment. Yeah, sure. It's just that I found those watches in the closet earlier, and I thought maybe. Wait, Alexis interrupted, her voice rising. You were snooping in the closet. Bradley's face flushed. I wasn't snooping. I was just looking for my tie and happened to see the box. Alexis crossed her arms tightly. Those watches aren't for you, Bradley. They're for my dad's birthday. I didn't know you'd be going through my things. Bradley stood up from the couch, frustration bubbling up inside. Snooping? I wasn't snooping. I just thought, after all this time, that maybe you'd gotten me something. Alexis sighed heavily. Bradley, we made an agreement. We're not doing gifts anymore. It just complicates things and adds unnecessary expectations. Unnecessary, Bradley said, his voice cracking. What's unnecessary about showing each other we care? We show we care by being practical, by sticking to what we agreed on. Alexis shot back, rising from the chair. Bradley threw his hands up in frustration. Well, maybe that's not enough for me anymore. Maybe I want more than just practicality. He stormed down the hall to their bedroom, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. He needed time to cool down, but a growing realization started gnawing at him that maybe he and Alexis had different ideas about their future together. Bradley sat on the edge of their bed, his face buried in his hands as he tried to make sense of the evening's fallout. Alexis had followed him into the room, but she leaned against the doorframe silently, her arms crossed, watching him for a moment before speaking up. Bradley, I don't want to fight, she said gently, but firmly. I just need you to understand why I thought we were on the same page. Bradley looked up, eyes tired and defeated. But we're not, Alexis. We're really not. You're so focused on practicality that you forget that this, he gestured around the room, is a marriage, not a business partnership. Alexis shifted her weight, crossing her arms tighter around herself. I just thought it made sense. You know how hard I work, how much pressure there is to meet these deadlines. I thought simplifying things would be good for us. Bradley stood up and approached her slowly. But at what cost, Lexi? You're so caught up in deadlines and goals that you've forgotten what it's like to have fun, to celebrate. Alexis rubbed her temples, sighing heavily. I don't mean to make you feel like you're unimportant. I just thought we had an understanding. Bradley reached out, placing a gentle hand on her arm. I know you didn't mean to, but can you see why I'm frustrated? I wanted tonight to be special, and finding those watches made me think that maybe you were ready to give a little too. Alexis looked down at the floor, her expression softening. I never meant to hurt you, Bradley. The watches were meant for my dad because we always exchange gifts for his birthday. I thought you were fine with us not doing the whole Valentine's Day thing. Bradley took a step closer, lifting her chin gently so she'd meet his eyes. I just want to feel like we matter to each other, like we're more than just roommates. She blinked back tears, swallowing hard. I know. And you're right, I let things slide. Work's been so overwhelming that I've forgotten how to celebrate anything. I'm sorry. Bradley pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly as he whispered, We'll figure it out. I just need to know we're in this together. Alexis hugged him back, her grip tightening. We are, Brad, we are. They stood there for a long moment, the weight of their unspoken fears pressing against them. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a long time, Bradley felt like Alexis was really listening. And that made all the difference. When they finally pulled apart, Alexis took a deep breath and offered a hesitant smile. Let's start again. How about tomorrow we make some plans to actually enjoy ourselves? Bradley smiled, feeling the tension easing between them. I'd like that. They left the bedroom hand in hand, the rough edges of their evening still present, but softened by the promise of trying again. The next morning, Bradley woke up hopeful. The tension of the previous night seemed to have lifted somewhat, and he believed that he and Alexis were on the same page again. But as he walked into the kitchen, he found Alexis already on her phone, tapping away furiously, a deep crease forming between her brows. "Morning, Lex," he said tentatively. "How'd you sleep?" "Fine," she replied, distracted. She didn't look up, her fingers still busy with work. Bradley filled the coffee maker and sat down across from her, drumming his fingers on the table as he watched her, waiting for her to acknowledge him. After a long silence, he spoke up. "So, what should we do today?" "Brad, I can't," she replied absently, her eyes glued to her screen. "I've got this conference call in an hour, then I need to get a report out before lunch." Bradley's heart sank as his hope evaporated. "But you said we could make plans." "I know what I said," she sighed, finally setting her phone down to meet his gaze. "But this came up last night. It's important." Bradley leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Something's always coming up, Lex, and it's always important." "Because it is," she insisted. "These projects are critical to the company's future. To my future." "And what about our future?" Bradley asked pointedly. Alexis's eyes narrowed. "Don't start this again, Bradley." "No, I have to," he said, his voice rising. "Every time we try to plan something, you find some excuse to put work first. It's like you don't care about us at all." "That's not fair," she shot back. "I care, but I have responsibilities." "And I'm not one of them," Bradley said, his frustration spilling over. "You treat this marriage like it's a side project you can ignore." Alexis stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "I can't believe you think that. Everything I do is for us, for our stability. How can you not see that?" "Because I don't feel stable," Bradley shouted, finally letting his anger out. "I feel like I'm always on the sidelines, like I'm just here to fit into your life whenever it's convenient for you." "You're being ridiculous," Alexis snapped. "I'm not going to apologize for working hard. You know what you signed up for." Bradley shook his head, feeling a painful knot forming in his chest. "I signed up for a partnership, not a one-sided relationship." "And I signed up for someone who understands me," she countered, her voice cold. "I thought you were that person, but maybe I was wrong." Silence hung heavy in the room, and Bradley felt something break inside. "Maybe you were," he said quietly, before turning away. He walked out of the kitchen and down the hall to their bedroom. For a moment, Alexis stood frozen, staring at the empty space where he'd been, her anger simmering. But as the minutes passed, her resolve began to falter, replaced by the gnawing realization that she had crossed a line. She followed him to the bedroom and found Bradley packing his suitcase, his movements quick and determined. "What are you doing?" she asked, panic edging into her voice. "I'm leaving." "Lex," he replied without looking up. "I can't live like this anymore." "Brad, wait," she pleaded. "Don't be rash. Let's talk about this." Bradley zipped up his suitcase and finally turned to face her. "What's there to talk about? You've made it clear where your priorities lie. And I can't be your afterthought anymore." Alexis felt her chest tighten as tears welled up in her eyes. "Please, Bradley, just give me another chance." But Bradley simply shook his head. "I'm sorry, Lex. I need to find myself again, and I can't do that here." With those words, he walked past her, leaving the bedroom and the life they had built together. Alexis stood there, rooted to the spot, her mind reeling as she realized just how much she had lost. Bradley carried his suitcase to the living room and placed it by the door, his mind made up. He wasn't looking back. As he reached for his coat, Alexis rushed out of the bedroom, eyes wide and tears streaming down her face. "Bradley, please, just wait a second," she said, her voice breaking. "We can't end it like this." Bradley paused and turned around, his gaze softening as he saw her standing there, vulnerable and distraught. "I've tried waiting, Lex. I've waited for you to see me, to value us. But it feels like you've been blind to that." She stepped closer, her breath shaky. I know I messed up, but I can't let you go without trying to make this right. Bradley folded his arms, holding his ground. And how will you make it right? How can I trust that things will change? Alexis wiped at her eyes and took a deep breath. Because I know I've been wrong, and I'm ready to do something about it. I've let work take over my life, our lives. I've put us second, and I never should have. I see that now. Bradley searched her face, looking for signs of sincerity. You say that, but words aren't enough anymore, Alexis. She nodded slowly. I know, but just give me one more chance to prove it to you. I don't want to lose you. You're not an afterthought to me, Bradley. He sighed deeply, still torn. You said that before, but then you went back to prioritizing work. Alexis's eyes flickered with determination as she clasped her hands together. Let me show you I can change. Starting today. I'll step back from the extra projects and spend more time with you. I'll find ways to celebrate our relationship, to make you feel appreciated. I promise. Bradley studied her for a long moment, uncertainty still clouding his thoughts. How can I know this isn't just another empty promise? She approached him cautiously, her eyes unwavering. Because I love you, Bradley, and I don't want to live in a world where you're not part of my life. Please, just give me a chance to show you. He could see the raw emotion on her face, her hands trembling slightly as she waited for his response. Bradley sighed and ran his fingers through his hair. Okay, he said finally, but we have to take this seriously. No more ignoring holidays or dismissing how we feel. Alexis nodded quickly, relief washing over her. Absolutely. I'll show you that you matter more to me than anything else. Bradley let his suitcase fall to the ground, pulling her into a tight embrace. Then let's take it slow and work through this. Alexis hugged him back, resting her head on his shoulder. Thank you, Brad. I won't let you down. For the first time in a long while, Bradley felt hopeful. He still had doubts, but he wanted to believe in the sincerity of Alexis's promise. They stood together for a while longer, letting the warmth of their embrace slowly replace the cold distance that had threatened to pull them apart. The next day dawned with a quiet, uneasy peace in the house. Bradley and Alexis had shared a tentative hug before bed, agreeing to work things out. However, the morning air was still heavy with unspoken words and lingering doubts. Over breakfast, Alexis set down her mug and cleared her throat. I'm thinking about cutting back on my hours. Maybe I could start coming home earlier and not answer emails after dinner. Bradley glanced up from his toast. That sounds like a good start, Lex, but you need to actually follow through on it. She nodded slowly. I know, and it might take some getting used to, but I'm committed to this, Brad. He gave her a small smile. Okay, I believe you. The day passed quietly, with both of them going about their separate routines, careful to avoid treading on each other's fragile emotions. They reconvened in the evening with a plan to watch a movie together, a simple date night that Bradley had suggested. As they settled onto the couch with a bowl of popcorn, Alexis hesitated before turning on the TV. I just want to say thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it, but it means the world to me. Bradley gave her a reassuring nod. I think we both deserve this chance. Throughout the movie, Alexis caught herself glancing at Bradley, feeling the tension between them slowly easing. She reached for his hand, and he squeezed hers gently. After the credits rolled, she leaned her head against his shoulder. So when's the next holiday we should celebrate? Bradley laughed. Well, St. Patrick's Day is coming up. She grinned. Let's plan a day out for that. Something just for us. Bradley wrapped an arm around her. Sounds good. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just as long as we're together. They sat there quietly, the flickering TV light casting soft shadows around the room. Bradley knew things weren't perfect and that they still had a lot to work on. But he could see the genuine effort in Alexis's eyes, and for now, that was enough. The next few weeks weren't without their hurdles. Alexis struggled to maintain her balance between work and their relationship, slipping occasionally into old habits. But each time she faltered, she'd catch herself and find a way to apologize, to try again. Bradley, too, learned to be more patient, more understanding of the pressures she faced. They knew this resolution was tenuous, but both held on tightly, determined not to let each other go. One evening, as they strolled hand in hand through the neighborhood, Bradley turned to Alexis with a gentle smile. "You know, we're not perfect, but we're getting there." She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Yeah, we're learning." With that, they walked on into the twilight, finding solace in each other's presence and a renewed sense of purpose in their commitment to one another. Their journey had just begun, but they were ready to face it together. Several months had passed since Bradley and Alexis had vowed to recommit to each other and their marriage. As they walked through the park one crisp spring morning, the changes in their relationship were evident in their easy smiles and the comfortable silence that surrounded them. Alexis stopped by a blooming cherry tree and looked up at the pink blossoms. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she remarked, a sense of wonder in her voice. Bradley nodded, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "It is. Kind of like a fresh start, you know." She leaned into him. "I was thinking the same thing. We've come a long way since Valentine's Day." "Yeah, we have," Bradley agreed, his voice soft. "You've really kept your promise, Lex. Coming home earlier, spending weekends together, it's made a huge difference." Alexis smiled up at him. "It wasn't just me. You've been incredibly supportive and understanding. It's made it easier to make those changes." Bradley chuckled. "Well, I figured it was worth the effort. After all, I quite like being married to you." She laughed, giving him a playful nudge. "Only quite." "Okay, more than quite," he corrected, grinning. They continued their walk, enjoying the early morning quiet. As they rounded a bend, Bradley stopped and faced Alexis. "So, I've been thinking." "About?" Alexis prompted, curiosity piqued. About us, our future. I know we had some rough times, but I feel like we're stronger now. Maybe it's time to start planning ahead, thinking about things we put off." Alexis's eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and nerves. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Bradley took both of her hands in his. "I think it's time we considered expanding our family. I mean, if you think we're ready." Alexis's breath caught in her throat. "Really? You think we're ready for that step?" "I do," he said sincerely. "I mean, we've been working so well together, growing closer every day. I think we could handle it." Alexis squeezed his hands, her heart full. "I think so too. I love you, Brad." "I love you too, Lex," he replied, pulling her into a tight embrace. As they stood there, holding each other under the cherry blossoms, both felt a renewed sense of commitment and love that they hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just about surviving the tough times anymore, it was about thriving together and building a future filled with love, understanding, and new beginnings. Their walk back home was filled with plans and laughter, the spring air echoing with their hopes and dreams. It was clear that this was not just an ending to their struggles, but a new chapter in their lives, one that they were ready to write together. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.